Emily Carter thought she knew the difference between love and lies until one impulsive kiss in a corporate office shattered everything she believed about second chances. At 27, she'd built walls around her heart after discovering her ex-fiancé's devastating double life, swearing she'd never be anyone's secret again. But Marcus Reed, the millionaire CEO she works for, is about to test every promise she made to herself. When their forbidden attraction explodes into a moment of passion, Emily doesn't realize someone is watching, and that single witness will set off a chain of whispers that threatens to destroy not just their careers, but the fragile trust Emily is finally learning to rebuild. What happens when the woman who demands complete honesty finds herself caught in a web of office politics, family expectations, and a love so powerful it might just be worth risking everything for? Will Emily choose the safety of her carefully guarded heart, or will she discover that some secrets are worth keeping while others are meant to be exposed? If you're ready to dive into this emotional roller coaster, hit subscribe and tell me which city you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from all over the world. The soft hum of the elevator filled the quiet morning air as Emily Carter stepped into the 32nd floor of Reed Industries. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she made her way to her desk, a steaming cup of coffee in one hand and her worn leather bag in the other. The city was still waking up outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, but Emily had been awake for over an hour, preparing for another day as executive assistant to Marcus Reed. She loved these quiet moments before the office came alive. The peace gave her time to think, to organize, and to prepare for whatever challenges the day might bring. Emily set her coffee down and pulled out her tablet, scrolling through Marcus's schedule with practiced efficiency. "Board meeting at 9, she murmured to herself, making a note to ensure the conference room was ready. "Lunch with the Patterson Group at 12:30. Client call with Morrison Industries at 3. Emily had been working for Marcus for 2 years now, and she knew his preferences better than he knew them himself. He liked his coffee black with just a touch of cream. He preferred his meetings to start 5 minutes early so he could settle in. He got restless during long presentations and appreciated when she slipped him a subtle reminder to wrap things up. What she couldn't quite figure out was why her heart still skipped a little when she heard his footsteps in the hallway each morning. The elevator chimed softly, and Emily looked up to see Marcus stepping onto the floor. He was early, as usual, his dark suit perfectly tailored and his briefcase in hand. At 32, Marcus Reed commanded attention wherever he went. His success in building Reed Industries from a small consulting firm into a multi-million-dollar company had earned him respect throughout the business community. But it was his quiet confidence and the way he treated everyone with genuine respect that had earned Emily's admiration. "Good morning, Emily," Marcus said, his deep voice carrying a warmth that made her smile. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," she replied, standing to hand him a folder. "Your 9 o'clock agenda is ready, and I've confirmed all your appointments for today. The Patterson Group moved lunch back 30 minutes, so you'll have time to review their proposal." Marcus paused at her desk, his dark eyes meeting hers. "What would I do without you?" The question hung in the air for just a moment longer than it should have, and Emily felt that familiar flutter in her chest. She pushed the feeling down, maintaining her professional composure. "You'd probably show up to meetings without the right files," she said with a small smile. Marcus laughed, a rich sound that filled the space between them. "Probably true. Thank you, Emily, for everything." He walked toward his office, and Emily watched him go, wondering why such simple words could make her feel so warm inside. She shook her head and returned to her work, determined to focus on the tasks ahead. An hour later, the office had filled with the usual morning energy. Phones were ringing, conversations were flowing, and the day was officially underway. Emily was reviewing notes for the board meeting when Laura Whitman approached her desk. "Morning, Emily," Laura said, setting down her own coffee cup. Laura worked as an assistant to the marketing director and had become a friendly face in Emily's daily routine. "Busy day ahead?" "Always," Emily replied, looking up from her computer. "How's your morning going?" "Oh, you know how it is. Mr. Davidson wants the quarterly reports reformatted, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly he means by more dynamic presentation." Laura rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "Sometimes I think they speak a different language up here." Emily laughed. I know exactly what you mean. I've learned that more dynamic usually means add more charts. You're probably right, Laura said, then leaned in slightly. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever feel like... Laura paused, glancing toward Marcus's office. Do you ever feel like there's something different about the way Mr. Reed treats you? I mean, compared to how the other executives treat their assistants? Emily's heart skipped, but she kept her expression neutral. What do you mean? I don't know. It's just, he seems to really depend on you, more than just for typical assistant stuff. And the way he looks at you sometimes... Laura trailed off, then shook her head. Never mind. I'm probably reading too much into things. He's a good boss, Emily said carefully. He respects the work I do. Right, of course. Laura straightened up, smiling. I should get back to those reports, see? You at lunch? Maybe. Depends on how the morning goes. After Laura left, Emily sat quietly for a moment, staring at her computer screen without really seeing it. She wasn't imagining it then. Other people had noticed something too. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Emily had learned to be careful with her heart. 3 years ago, she had been engaged to David, a man she thought she knew completely. They had planned a life together, talked about children and houses and growing old side by side. But David had been living a double life, keeping parts of himself hidden from her. When she discovered his deception, it hadn't just broken her heart, it had shattered her ability to trust. Since then, Emily had built walls around herself, walls that kept her safe but also kept her lonely. She had thrown herself into her work, finding satisfaction in being needed and valued professionally. But with Marcus, those walls felt thinner somehow, more fragile. The morning flew by in a blur of meetings and phone calls. Emily moved through her tasks with practiced efficiency, making sure Marcus had everything he needed while staying in the background herself. It was a role she had perfected, essential but invisible, trusted but distant. At 12 o'clock, the office began to empty as people headed out for lunch. Emily usually ate at her desk, but today she decided to take her sandwich to the small break area on their floor. She needed a few minutes away from her desk, away from the constant awareness of Marcus just 20 feet away. The break area was quiet, with large windows that looked out over the city. Emily sat at a small table, unwrapping her sandwich and enjoying the peaceful moment. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through a few messages from friends, smiling at photos of her college roommate's new baby. Mind if I join you? Emily looked up, startled to find Marcus standing beside her table with his own lunch, a simple sandwich and an apple. In all the time she had worked for him, he had never eaten in the break area. Of course, she said, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Marcus sat down, and for a moment they ate in comfortable silence. Emily was acutely aware of how different this felt from their usual interactions. Here, away from the formal structure of their offices, they were just two people sharing a meal. It's nice to get away from the desk for a few minutes, Marcus said finally. I was thinking the same thing. Sometimes the office can feel... Emily searched for the right word. Overwhelming? Marcus suggested. Exactly. Emily smiled. Do you ever feel like you're always on, like you can't just be yourself for a minute? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering her question. More than you might think, he said softly. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a part, the successful CEO, the guy who has it all figured out. But the truth is, most days I'm just trying to make the right decisions and hope I don't mess everything up. Emily was surprised by his honesty. This wasn't the confident executive she worked with every day. This was someone more vulnerable, more human. You don't give yourself enough credit, she said gently. You've built something incredible here, and you treat people with real respect. That's not as common as it should be. Marcus looked at her directly, his dark eyes serious. You see the best in people, Emily, even when they don't deserve it. Everyone deserves kindness, Emily replied, even when they're struggling. Even when they're scared? Marcus asked, his voice so quiet, Emily almost didn't hear him. Especially then. They finished their lunch in comfortable conversation, talking about books and movies and small observations about life. Emily found herself laughing more than she had in months, and she noticed that Marcus seemed more relaxed than she had ever seen him. When they returned to work, Emily felt a shift between them, subtle but unmistakable. The professional distance was still there, but underneath it was something warmer, more personal. The afternoon brought its own challenges. A client call ran long, pushing back other meetings. An important contract needed last-minute revisions. Marcus moved through it all with his usual calm efficiency, but Emily could see the stress building in the tightness around his eyes, the way he rubbed his temples when he thought no one was looking. At 5:30, most of the office had cleared out, but Marcus was still at his desk, reviewing documents for the next day's presentations. Emily had finished her own tasks, but something kept her from gathering her things to leave. Instead, she knocked softly on his office door. "Come in," Marcus called without looking up. "I was about to head out," Emily said, stepping into his office. "Is there anything else you need for tomorrow?" Marcus looked up from his papers, and Emily could see the exhaustion in his face. "No, I think we're set. You should go home. You've been here long enough." But Emily didn't move. Something in his expression, a kind of weariness that went deeper than just a long day, made her hesitate. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Marcus leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. For a moment, Emily thought he might give her his usual reassurance that everything was fine. Instead, he was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes I wonder if this is all worth it," he said finally. "Building the company, working 16-hour days, being responsible for so many people's livelihoods. Sometimes I wonder what I'm actually building toward." Emily stepped closer to his desk. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Marcus paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I have everything I thought I wanted. Success, financial security, respect. But at the end of the day, I go home to an empty apartment and eat dinner alone. I have business associates, but not many real friends. I have a life that looks perfect from the outside, but it feels hollow." The vulnerability in his voice made Emily's heart ache. She recognized the loneliness he was describing because she felt it too, in her own way. "You're not alone," she said softly. "You have people who care about you. Your mother, the people here who depend on you, not just for their jobs, but because they believe in what you're building." "And you?" Marcus asked, his eyes meeting hers. "Do you believe in what I'm building?" "I believe in you," Emily said without hesitation. "I see how hard you work, how much you care about doing the right thing. That matters more than you know." Marcus stood up from his desk, moving around to where Emily stood. They were closer now than they had ever been in a professional setting, and Emily could feel her heart beating faster. "You make it easier," Marcus said quietly. "Coming to work, dealing with all the pressure, knowing you're here, knowing I can count on you, it makes everything more manageable." "That's what I'm here for," Emily replied, though her voice came out softer than she intended. "Is it?" Marcus asked, and there was something in his tone that made Emily look up at him more carefully. They stood there for a moment, the office quiet around them, the city lights beginning to twinkle outside the windows. Emily felt like they were balanced on the edge of something important, something that could change everything between them. Then Marcus stepped closer, his hand reaching up to gently touch her cheek. Emily's breath caught in her throat, but she didn't pull away. "Emily," he said her name like a question, like a request for permission. Before she could think, before she could analyze or worry or remember all the reasons this was complicated, Emily found herself nodding slightly. Marcus leaned down, and then his lips were on hers, soft and warm and perfect. For a moment, Emily let herself fall into the kiss, let herself feel the connection that had been building between them for months. Marcus's hand cupped her face gently, and she could feel the tenderness behind the gesture, the careful way he held her like she was something precious. Then, reality crashed back, and Emily pulled away, her eyes wide with shock and something close to panic. "What?" she started, then stopped, unable to finish the question. Marcus stepped back immediately, his own expression showing surprise at what had just happened. "Emily, what does this mean?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, looking as shaken as she felt. "I don't know, I couldn't help myself. I've wanted to do that for so long." "But I work for you," Emily said, the practical part of her mind finally catching up. "This changes everything." "Does it have to?" Marcus asked. Before Emily could answer, she caught a glimpse of movement in the hallway outside Marcus's office. Through the glass walls, she saw a figure walking past, someone who might have seen them, might have witnessed the kiss. Emily's heart started racing for entirely different reasons now. The kiss had been private, intimate, just between the two of them. But if someone had seen... "We need to talk about this," she said, stepping further back from Marcus. "But not here, not now." Marcus nodded, understanding the shift in her mood. "You're right. We should—" "I need to think," Emily interrupted gently. It's complicated, Marcus. My last relationship. It ended because of secrets, because of things that were hidden. I can't do that again." "I'm not asking you to hide anything," Marcus said quickly. "I would never ask that of you." "Wouldn't you?" Emily asked, and she could hear the uncertainty in her own voice. "What happens tomorrow? Do we pretend this didn't happen? Do we tell people? Do we figure out what this means before anyone else has to know?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, and Emily could see him processing her questions, understanding the complexity of what they had just started. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want honesty," Emily said without hesitation. "Complete honesty. If this is something real, if it's something worth exploring, then it can't be a secret. I won't be someone's hidden relationship again." "Then it won't be," Marcus said, his voice firm with conviction. "Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, it won't be hidden." Emily wanted to believe him. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, hear it in his voice. But she had believed before, had trusted before, and it had cost her everything. "I need time to think," she said again. "This is my job, my career, my life. I can't make decisions about this when I'm feeling so much." Marcus nodded, though Emily could see the disappointment in his expression. "Take all the time you need." "But Emily?" "Yes?" "I meant what I said, about not hiding, about being honest. I know you've been hurt before, and I would never want to add to that." Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, moved by the gentleness in his voice. "Thank you." She gathered her purse and jacket, moving toward the door of his office. At the threshold, she turned back to look at him one more time. "Good night, Marcus. Good night, Emily." As Emily waited for the elevator, her mind raced with questions and possibilities and fears. The kiss had been everything she had imagined it would be, and more. But it had also opened a door that she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. The elevator arrived, and as the doors closed behind her, Emily caught her reflection in the polished metal. Her cheeks were still flushed, her lips still tingling from Marcus's kiss. She looked like a woman who had been thoroughly kissed by someone she cared about. The question now was whether she was brave enough to let it happen again. Emily barely slept that night. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of the kiss. The way Marcus had looked at her, the gentleness of his touch, the way her heart had raced when their lips met. But underneath the warmth of those memories was a cold thread of fear that she couldn't shake. She had been down this road before, the excitement, the connection, the feeling that maybe this time would be different. But David had taught her that feelings could lie, that people could hide parts of themselves even when they seemed completely open. When her alarm went off at 6:30, Emily felt like she hadn't slept at all. She moved through her morning routine mechanically, choosing a conservative blue dress and pulling her hair back into a neat bun. She needed all the professional armor she could manage today. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt longer than usual. Emily's stomach churned with nervousness as she wondered how things would be between her and Marcus. Would he pretend nothing had happened? Would he want to talk about it immediately? Would everything be awkward and strange? She stepped onto the floor and was surprised to find Marcus already at his desk, visible through his glass office walls. He looked up when she arrived, and their eyes met for just a moment before Emily looked away, her cheeks flushing. "Good morning," she said quietly as she settled at her desk, not quite meeting his gaze. "Good morning, Emily," Marcus replied, his voice carefully neutral. "The Peterson files are on your desk for review." They fell into their usual professional rhythm, but Emily could feel the tension underneath every interaction. When Marcus needed documents, she handed them to him without their fingers touching. When he asked questions, she kept her answers brief and businesslike. By mid-morning, the careful distance between them felt more exhausting than their usual easy collaboration. Laura appeared at Emily's desk just before lunch, a curious expression on her face. "You seem tense today," Laura observed, perching on the edge of Emily's desk. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," Emily replied, not looking up from her computer screen. Laura glanced toward Marcus's office where he was on a phone call. "You know, I was working late yesterday and I thought I saw... Well, never mind. It's probably nothing." Emily's hands stilled on her keyboard. "Saw what?" "I was walking back from the copy machine around 6, and I thought I saw you and Mr. Reed in his office. It looked like..." Laura paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "It looked like you two were standing pretty close together." Emily's heart started racing, but she kept her voice steady. "We were probably just reviewing documents. We had a lot to get through yesterday." "Right, of course." Laura studied Emily's face. "You just seem different today. Both of you, actually. Like something changed." "I don't know what you mean," Emily said, finally looking up at Laura with what she hoped was a convincing expression of confusion. Laura shrugged. "Maybe I'm imagining things, but if something was going on between you two, well, that would be pretty complicated, wouldn't it?" "Nothing's going on," Emily said firmly, hating how the lie felt in her mouth. "Okay." Laura slid off the desk. "I'm grabbing lunch from the deli downstairs. Want me to bring you something?" "No, thank you. I'm not very hungry." After Laura left, Emily sat at her desk feeling sick to her stomach. If Laura had seen something, if she was already speculating, how long before other people started talking? How long before rumors began to spread? This was exactly what Emily had been afraid of. The whispered conversations, the knowing looks, the assumptions people would make. In her last relationship, she had been blindsided by David's secrets. This time, she could see the complications coming from a mile away. Around 2 o'clock, Marcus appeared at her desk with a serious expression. "Emily, could I speak with you privately? In my office?" Emily's stomach dropped, but she nodded and followed him. Marcus closed the door behind them and gestured for her to sit in one of the chairs across from his desk. "I've been thinking about last night," Marcus began, settling into his own chair. "About what happened, and what you said about needing time." Emily nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "I want you to know that I don't regret kissing you," Marcus continued, "but I can see that it's made things difficult for you, and that's the last thing I wanted." "It's not that simple," Emily said quietly. "It's not just about regret." "Then tell me what it's about. Help me understand." Emily took a deep breath, trying to find the words. 3 years ago, I was engaged to someone I thought I knew completely. We had been together for 2 years, and I believed we had no secrets from each other. But it turned out he was living a double life. He had another apartment across town, another group of friends, another version of himself that I never saw. Marcus's expression grew serious as he listened. "When I found out, it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt," Emily continued. "It was the realization that I had been so wrong about someone I loved, that I had trusted completely, and that trust had been misplaced." "Emily, I know you're not David," Emily interrupted gently, "but that's not the point. The point is that I learned I can't always trust my own judgment about people. And now, with you, I'm feeling things that scare me because they're so strong. But I don't know if those feelings are real or if I'm just seeing what I want to see again." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, absorbing her words. "What would help you trust your judgment again?" Emily was surprised by the question. She had expected him to try to convince her that her fears were unfounded, to promise that he was different. Instead, he was asking what she needed. "Honesty," she said without hesitation. "Complete openness. If we're going to explore whatever this is between us, I need to know that you'll never hide things from me. Not the small things, not the big things. Nothing." "You have my word on that," Marcus said immediately. "But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me too." "Okay. Do you want to explore this, whatever this is between us? Because if you don't, if this is too complicated or too scary, I'll understand. We can go back to the way things were, and I'll never bring it up again." Emily studied his face, seeing the vulnerability there, the way he was putting himself out there and waiting for her answer. The careful, controlled CEO was gone, replaced by a man who was asking her to take a chance on something that mattered to him. "I want to," she said softly. I'm terrified, but I want to. Marcus smiled, and Emily felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. So what do we do now? We take it slow, Emily said. We figure out what this is before we tell anyone else. Not because we're hiding it, but because we need to understand it ourselves first. That makes sense. And we have boundaries, Emily continued. At work, we're professional. No one should be able to guess what's happening between us based on how we act in the office. Agreed. And if either of us starts to feel like this is too complicated or too risky, we talk about it immediately. No letting things fester, no assumptions. Absolutely. Marcus leaned forward in his chair. Emily, I know this is scary for you. It's scary for me too, in different ways. But I think what we have is worth exploring carefully. Emily felt a flutter of hope in her chest. So we're doing this? We're going to try? If you want to try, then yes, we're doing this. For the first time all day, Emily smiled. It felt like they had found a path forward, a way to honor both her need for caution and the connection they both felt. Can I ask you something? Emily said. Anything. What made you kiss me last night? What changed? Marcus was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider his answer. You asked me if I was okay, and you actually waited for a real answer. Most people ask that question, but they don't really want to hear that you're struggling or lonely or scared. They want you to say you're fine so they can move on. But you stayed, and you listened, and you made me feel like maybe I didn't have to carry everything alone. Emily's heart clenched at the honesty in his voice. You don't have to carry everything alone. I've been doing it for so long, I forgot what it felt like to have someone who actually cared about the answer when they asked how I was doing. Well, now you do, Emily said gently. Someone who cares, I mean. Marcus smiled, and Emily felt that familiar flutter in her chest. But this time, instead of pushing the feeling away, she let herself feel it. They agreed that Marcus would call her that evening, and they would plan to have dinner later in the week, something quiet and private, away from the office where they could talk without worrying about who might see them. The rest of the afternoon passed more smoothly. Emily still felt the awareness between her and Marcus, but now it felt less fraught and more hopeful. When he needed something, she provided it efficiently. When she had questions, he answered them thoroughly. To anyone watching, they probably looked exactly like they always had. But Emily could feel the difference in the small moments. The way Marcus's fingers lingered for just a second when she handed him documents. The way he said, "Thank you," with a warmth that seemed meant just for her. The way he looked at her when he thought no one else was watching. At 5:30, as Emily was gathering her things to leave, Laura appeared at her desk again. You seem better this afternoon, Laura observed. More like yourself. I told you I was just tired this morning, Emily replied, slipping her purse over her shoulder. Right, Laura smiled. Well, whatever it was, I'm glad you worked it out. Emily paused, wondering if there was a deeper meaning to Laura's words. But Laura's expression seemed genuinely friendly, without any hint of suspicion or curiosity. Thanks, Emily said. I'll see you tomorrow. As Emily waited for the elevator, she saw Marcus through his office windows, still at his desk, but packing up to leave soon. He looked up and caught her eye, giving her a small smile that made her stomach flutter. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own opportunities to navigate this new territory they were entering. But for the first time since the kiss, Emily felt like maybe they could figure it out together. The elevator doors opened, and as Emily stepped inside, she allowed herself to feel a cautious optimism. She was taking a risk, opening herself up to the possibility of being hurt again, but she was also opening herself up to the possibility of something beautiful. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth the fear. That evening, Emily sat in her apartment waiting for Marcus's call. She had changed out of her work clothes into comfortable jeans and a soft sweater, and she had made herself a cup of tea that was now growing cold on the coffee table. When her phone finally rang at 7 o'clock, Emily felt her heart skip. Hello, she answered, trying to keep her voice casual. Hi, Marcus said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. How was the rest of your day? Better, Emily admitted. Talking this afternoon helped. How was yours? Productive. I actually got more done this afternoon than I had all week. It's amazing what a little clarity can do. They talked for over an hour, about work and books and childhood memories. It was easy and comfortable, like their conversation at lunch the day before, but with an undercurrent of possibility that made everything feel more significant. I made reservations for Friday night, Marcus said as their conversation began to wind down. A little place about 20 minutes outside the city. Quiet, good food, not somewhere we're likely to run into anyone from work. That sounds perfect, Emily said. Emily? Yes? I know this is new and scary, but I'm glad we're trying. I'm glad you're willing to take this chance with me. Emily felt warmth spread through her chest. So am I. After they hung up, Emily sat in her quiet apartment feeling something she hadn't experienced in a long time, excitement about the future, not just hope, but actual excitement about what might be possible. She thought about Marcus's words, about how she made him feel less alone. The truth was, he made her feel less alone too. For the first time since David, she was willing to risk her heart again, and that felt like the beginning of something beautiful. 2 days later, Emily found herself standing in front of her bedroom mirror, trying to decide what to wear for dinner with Marcus. She had changed clothes 3 times, wanting to look nice, but not like she was trying too hard. Finally, she settled on a simple black dress that was elegant but not too formal, paired with low heels and minimal jewelry. She wanted to look like herself, just a slightly dressed-up version. Marcus picked her up at her apartment at 7 o'clock, and Emily's breath caught when she opened the door. He was wearing dark slacks and a navy button-down shirt with no tie, and he looked relaxed and handsome in a way that made her heart race. "You look beautiful," he said, offering her a small bouquet of flowers, daisies and baby's breath, simple and sweet. "Thank you," Emily said, accepting the flowers and feeling her cheeks flush. "Let me put these in water, and then I'll be ready." The drive to the restaurant was comfortable, filled with easy conversation about their week and observations about the changing seasons. Emily found herself relaxing, remembering why she had been drawn to Marcus in the first place. He was thoughtful and funny, and he had a way of making her feel like what she said mattered. The restaurant was exactly what Emily had hoped for, small and intimate, with soft lighting and quiet music. Their table was in a corner, private enough for real conversation, but not so secluded that it felt inappropriate. "This is lovely," Emily said as they settled into their seats. "I hoped you'd like it," Marcus replied. "I wanted somewhere we could talk without worrying about who might be listening." They ordered wine and appetizers, and as the evening progressed, Emily felt the last of her nervousness fade away. This felt right. Sitting across from Marcus, talking and laughing, sharing stories about their lives outside of work. "Tell me about your family," Marcus said as they waited for their main courses to arrive. "There's not much to tell," Emily replied. "It's just me and my dad now. My mom died when I was 15, and Dad raised me, on his own after that. That must have been hard." "It was. But Dad did his best. He's a good man. Works in construction, very practical and straightforward. He taught me the value of hard work and treating people with respect." "He sounds like someone I'd like to meet," Marcus said. Emily felt a little flutter of nervousness at the idea of Marcus meeting her father, but it was a good kind of nervous, the kind that came with thinking about a future together. "What about your family?" Emily asked. "My mother is probably the strongest person I know," Marcus said. "She raised me as a single parent too, worked 2 jobs to make sure I could go to college. She's retired now, but she still keeps me on my toes. She has very strong opinions about how I should be living my life." "What kind of opinions?" Marcus smiled. "She thinks I work too much and don't focus enough on relationships. She's been telling me for years that success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with." "She sounds wise." "She is. I think you'd like her." As the evening continued, Emily found herself sharing things she hadn't told anyone in a long time. Her fears about trusting again, her dreams for the future, her thoughts about what really mattered in life. Marcus listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own experiences in return. "I have to ask you something," Marcus said as they shared dessert, "and I want you to be completely honest with me." "Okay," Emily said, though she felt a flutter of anxiety. "Are you worried about what people at work will think? When they find out about us, I mean?" Emily considered the question carefully. "A little," she admitted. "Not because I'm ashamed of having feelings for you, but because I know how office relationships can be perceived. People might think I got my job because of personal reasons, or that I'm getting special treatment. And that bothers you. It does. I've worked hard to build my reputation as a competent professional. I don't want people to think that was all fake. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. What if I told you that your job was never in question? That regardless of what happens between us personally, you've earned your position based on merit alone? I'd believe you, Emily said, but I'm not sure everyone else would. Then we'll prove them wrong, Marcus said simply. We'll show them that we can maintain professional standards while also being honest about our personal relationship. Emily felt a surge of admiration for his confidence, but also a lingering worry. What if it gets complicated? What if people start talking or making assumptions? Then we'll deal with it together, Marcus said, reaching across the table to take her hand. Emily, I can't promise that this will be easy. Office relationships are complicated, and people will have opinions, but I can promise that I'll never ask you to hide who you are or what you mean to me. Emily looked down at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of his touch and the sincerity behind his words. David used to say things like that too, about never hiding, about being honest, but when it came down to it, he chose secrecy anyway. I'm not David, Marcus said gently, and I understand why you need to be careful. All I'm asking is that you give me a chance to prove that I mean what I say. Emily lifted her eyes to meet his, seeing the earnestness there, the vulnerability of a man who was putting his heart on the line. She thought about the past 2 years, about all the ways Marcus had shown integrity and consistency in how he treated people. She thought about the conversation they had shared in his office, about his willingness to be open about his own fears and loneliness. Okay, she said quietly. I'll give you that chance. Marcus smiled, and Emily felt something shift inside her chest. A wall coming down, a door opening to possibilities she had been too afraid to consider. They stayed at the restaurant until almost 10 o'clock, talking and laughing and discovering new things about each other. When Marcus walked Emily to her apartment door, there was a moment of uncertainty as they both wondered how the evening should end. I had a wonderful time tonight, Emily said, looking up at him in the soft light of her building's entrance. So did I, Marcus replied. Better than I had hoped, actually. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Emily could see the question in Marcus's eyes, could feel the pull between them. Can I see you again? Marcus asked softly. Not for work, I mean. Like this. Yes, Emily whispered, and then Marcus was leaning down and she was rising up on her toes, and they were kissing again. This kiss was different from the impulsive one in his office. This one was slower, more intentional, full of promise and possibility. Emily let herself sink into it, let herself feel the connection that had been building between them for so long. When they finally broke apart, Emily felt breathless and hopeful and scared all at once. Good night, Emily, Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. Good night, Marcus. As Emily watched him walk back to his car, she felt like she was standing at the edge of something huge and life-changing. Tomorrow would bring new questions, new challenges, new opportunities to navigate this relationship they were building. But tonight, Emily felt nothing but possibility. The weekend passed in a blur of quiet happiness. Marcus called Emily on Saturday morning, and they ended up talking for 2 hours about everything and nothing. On Sunday, they met for coffee at a small cafe across town, spending the afternoon walking through a nearby park and discovering they both loved old movies and terrible puns. Emily felt like she was seeing a completely different side of Marcus, relaxed, funny, surprisingly silly at times. He told her stories about his childhood, about the time he tried to start a neighborhood business selling homemade cookies and ended up eating all the inventory. She shared memories of her mother, stories she rarely told anyone, and Marcus listened with the kind of attention that made her feel truly heard. By Sunday evening, Emily was cautiously optimistic. Maybe this could work. Maybe she could trust her feelings this time. But Monday morning brought a harsh reminder of how complicated their situation really was. Emily arrived at work to find Laura waiting by her desk, practically vibrating with curiosity. Okay, I have to ask, Laura said without preamble. Were you at Romano's on Friday night? Emily's blood went cold. Romano's was the restaurant where she and Marcus had dinner. Why do you ask? My cousin works there as a server, and she swore she saw you having dinner with a guy who looked just like Mr. Reed. She said you two looked pretty cozy. Emily felt her careful composure slipping. I don't know what your cousin thinks she saw, but Emily, Laura interrupted gently, it's okay. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm just curious and maybe a little concerned. Concerned about what? Laura glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. Look, I like you. You're one of the few genuinely nice people in this place. But office relationships are tricky, especially when there's a power difference. I just want to make sure you know what you're getting into. Emily's heart was racing, but she tried to keep her voice steady. Laura, I appreciate your concern, but there's nothing going on between Mr. Reed and me. Your cousin must have been mistaken. Laura studied Emily's face for a long moment. Okay, she said finally. But Emily? If something was going on, you could talk to me. I'm not a gossip, despite what it might seem like. I'm just someone who cares about her friends. After Laura left, Emily sat at her desk feeling sick to her stomach. If Laura's cousin had recognized them, who else might have seen them? How long before rumors started spreading throughout the office? She glanced toward Marcus's office and saw him on a phone call, oblivious to the storm brewing outside his door. Emily felt a familiar panic rising in her chest, the same feeling she'd had when David's deception started unraveling, when she realized that secrets had a way of coming to light whether you wanted them to or not. The morning dragged on, with Emily jumping every time someone approached her desk. She found herself analyzing every conversation, every glance, wondering if people were talking about her and Marcus. By lunchtime, her nerves were stretched to the breaking point. She was eating a sandwich at her desk when Marcus appeared beside her, looking concerned. Are you okay? He asked quietly. You seem tense today. Emily looked around quickly to make sure no one was watching, then met his eyes. We need to talk, but not here. My office? No, too visible. Can we take a walk? Around the block or something? Marcus nodded immediately. Let me grab my jacket. 10 minutes later, they were walking down the busy street outside their building, far enough from the office that Emily finally felt like she could breathe. What's wrong? Marcus asked as soon as they were away from the building. Emily told him about Laura's cousin, about the questions and the knowing looks she thought she was seeing. With each word, she could feel her anxiety building. I knew this would happen, Emily said, her voice rising slightly. I knew people would start talking and making assumptions, and now Laura knows, or at least suspects. And how long before she tells someone else? Emily, slow down, Marcus said gently, putting a hand on her arm to stop her from pacing. One person might have seen us at dinner. That doesn't mean everyone knows or that there's some office scandal brewing. But it's starting, Emily insisted. The whispers, the questions, the looks. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Are you regretting this? Regretting us? Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. I don't know. I want to be with you, Marcus, I really do. But I can't handle being the subject of office gossip. I can't handle people looking at me differently or questioning my competence. So what do you want to do? Emily had been dreading this question because she didn't have a good answer. Maybe we need to slow things down, way down, until we figure out how to handle the professional side of this. She could see the disappointment in Marcus's face, but he nodded. If that's what you need, then that's what we'll do. I'm sorry, Emily whispered. I know this isn't fair to you. I know I'm being paranoid and scared. You're not being paranoid, Marcus said firmly. You're being careful, and you have every right to be. I just wish... He trailed off, shaking his head. Wish what? I wish I could take away all the hurt that came before this. I wish I could make you feel safe enough to trust that this is different. Emily's heart clenched at the pain in his voice. It's not about trusting you, Marcus. It's about trusting myself, about trusting that I'm not making the same mistakes again. They walked back to the office in subdued silence, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Emily felt like she was drowning in her own fears, unable to move forward but too invested to give up entirely. The rest of the week passed in a strange sort of limbo. Emily and Marcus maintained their professional relationship, but the easy warmth between them was strained. Emily caught Marcus looking at her sometimes with an expression of longing that made her chest ache, but she didn't know how to bridge the gap she had created. Laura, thankfully, didn't bring up the restaurant sighting again, but Emily could feel her friend watching her with concerned eyes. Other, Colleagues seemed oblivious to any change, which should have made Emily feel better, but somehow didn't. On Friday afternoon, Emily was surprised to see an older woman approaching her desk. She was elegant and well-dressed, with silver hair and kind eyes that looked remarkably familiar. "Excuse me," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm looking for Marcus Reed. I'm his mother, Helen Reed." Emily's heart skipped. "Of course. Let me let him know you're here. I'm Emily Carter, his assistant." "Emily," Helen repeated, and something in her tone made Emily look at her more carefully. "I've heard so much about you." Before Emily could ask what she meant, Marcus appeared from his office, his face lighting up when he saw his mother. "Mom, what are you doing here? I thought you weren't coming until next week." "I finished my business early and decided to surprise you," Helen said, accepting Marcus's hug. "I hope that's all right." "Of course it's all right. Emily, would you mind if I leave a little early today? I'd like to take my mother to dinner." "Of course not," Emily replied, trying to ignore the way Helen was studying her face with intelligent eyes. "It was lovely to meet you, Emily," Helen said as Marcus gathered his things. "I do hope we'll have a chance to talk more soon." After they left, Emily sat at her desk wondering what Helen had meant by hearing so much about her. How much had Marcus told his mother about their situation? And what did Helen think about her son getting involved with his assistant? That evening, Emily was curled up on her couch with a book when her phone rang. She was surprised to see Marcus's name on the caller ID. "Hi," she answered, suddenly nervous. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to explain about my mother." "You don't need to explain anything." "Yes, I do," Marcus said firmly. "Emily, I told her about you, about us, about how I feel about you." Emily's stomach dropped. "Marcus, we agreed to slow things down. We agreed not to tell people until we figured this out." "I told her before our conversation on Monday," Marcus said quickly, "before you asked to slow things down, and I'm glad I did because she gave me some perspective I think you need to hear." "What kind of perspective?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "She reminded me that love isn't something you can schedule or control, that sometimes you have to be brave enough to fight for what matters, even when it's scary." Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Marcus, she also said something about you specifically, after meeting you today." "What did she say?" "She said you looked like someone who was afraid of being happy, someone who had been hurt badly and was protecting herself by keeping good things at arm's length." Emily was crying now, though she wasn't sure why. "She doesn't even know me. She's a wise woman, Emily, and she's right, isn't she? You are afraid of being happy. You're so focused on protecting yourself from being hurt again that you're not letting yourself have something beautiful." "That's not fair," Emily whispered, "isn't it? Emily, we had one dinner date and you've been pulling away ever since. One person might have seen us together and you're ready to give up on this entirely. How is that not being afraid of happiness?" Emily wiped at her tears, hating that he was right but not knowing how to change it. "I don't know how to not be afraid, Marcus. I don't know how to trust that this won't end up like last time." "Then let me help you," Marcus said gently. "Let me show you that this is different, but I can't do that if you won't let me try." Emily was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with her fears and her desires. "What are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to have faith. In me, in us, in the possibility that sometimes good things really can last. I'm asking you to stop running away from something that could make us both happy. And if people at work start talking, then we'll deal with it together. Emily, I've been thinking about this all week, and I realize I've been approaching it wrong. I've been trying to hide this relationship to protect you, but hiding it is exactly what makes it seem shameful or inappropriate." Emily felt a spark of hope mixed with terror. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time to be open about this, not announce it to the whole office, but stop pretending it doesn't exist. Stop acting like there's something wrong with two adults caring about each other." Emily's heart was racing. "That's a big step, Marcus." "Yes, it is, but Emily, I'm tired of feeling like I have to choose between my personal happiness and my professional life, and I don't want you to feel like you have to make that choice either." Emily closed her eyes, trying to imagine what it would be like to stop hiding, to stop being afraid. It was terrifying, but it was also oddly liberating to consider. "I need to think about this," she said finally. "I know. Take all the time you need. But Emily?" "Yes? I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you decide, I'm not giving up on this. On us. After they hung up, Emily sat in her quiet apartment feeling like she was standing at a crossroads. She could keep protecting herself, keep her walls up and her heart safe, or she could take the biggest risk of her life and trust that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The next morning was Saturday, and Emily woke up with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. She spent the morning cleaning her apartment and thinking, really thinking, about what she wanted her life to look like. By afternoon, she had made her decision. She called her father, something she did every weekend, but this time with a specific purpose. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Emily told him about Marcus, about her fears, about the choice she was facing. Her father listened without interruption, the way he always had when she needed to work through something difficult. "Sounds like you care about this man," Tom said when she finished. "I do, more than I expected to." "And he cares about you?" "Yes, I think he does." "Then what are you afraid of, really?" Emily considered the question. "I'm afraid of being wrong about him. I'm afraid of getting hurt again." "Emily," her father said gently, "do you remember what I told you after your mother died, about how loving someone always comes with the risk of losing them? You said that the love was worth the risk." "That's right, and I still believe that. Your mother and I had 15 beautiful years together before cancer took her away. I could have spent those years holding back, protecting myself from the possibility of loss, but then I would have missed out on the best parts of my life." Emily felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "But what if I'm wrong about Marcus? What if he's not who I think he is? Then you'll deal with it, and you'll move on." "But Emily, what if you're right about him? What if this is the real thing, and you let fear keep you from having it?" After they hung up, Emily sat with her father's words. She thought about her mother, who had been brave and loving until the very end. She thought about her father, who had rebuilt his life after losing the woman he loved, but had never regretted taking the risk of loving her in the first place. And she thought about Marcus, patient and understanding, willing to fight for something he believed in. For the first time in 3 years, Emily felt ready to be brave. Sunday evening, she called Marcus. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble when he answered. "And? I want to try, really try. No more pulling back, no more letting fear make my decisions." She could hear the smile in Marcus's voice when he responded. "Are you sure?" "I'm terrified," Emily admitted, "but I'm sure. I don't want to spend my life wondering what could have been." "What changed your mind?" Emily smiled through her tears. "Someone reminded me that love is worth the risk." "I'm glad," Marcus said softly. "So what happens now?" "Now we figure it out together, all of it. The work stuff, the personal stuff, all of it." "Together," Marcus agreed. "I like the sound of that." As Emily hung up the phone, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, excitement about the future. Not just hope, but genuine excitement about what they might build together. There would still be challenges ahead, still complications to navigate. But for the first time since David's betrayal, Emily felt strong enough to face whatever came next. She was ready to stop protecting herself from happiness and start fighting for it instead. Monday morning arrived with a crispness in the air that matched Emily's newfound resolve. She dressed carefully in a navy blue dress that made her feel confident and professional, then took a deep breath as she stepped off the elevator onto the 32nd floor. Marcus was already at his desk, and when he looked up and saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made Emily's heart skip. "Good morning, Emily," he said, standing as she approached. "Good morning, Marcus," she replied, and something in her tone, warm but still professional, seemed to tell him everything he needed to know about her state of mind. They fell into their usual morning routine, but Emily could feel a difference in the energy between them. The tension and uncertainty of the past week had been replaced by something steadier, more purposeful. They were moving forward together now. Around 10 o'clock, Laura appeared at Emily's desk with her usual cheerful demeanor, but Emily noticed her friend studying her face more carefully than usual. "You seem better today," Laura observed, "more like yourself." "I feel better," Emily admitted. "I had some time to think over the weekend, and I worked through some things that were bothering me." "Good. I was worried about you last week. You seemed so stressed." Emily took a breath, remembering her conversation with Marcus about being open instead of hiding. Laura, can I tell you something? As a friend, not as office gossip? Laura's expression grew serious. Of course. Your cousin was right about seeing me at Romano's with Marcus. Laura's eyebrows shot up, but she didn't seem shocked. I kind of figured. You both looked pretty miserable last week, like something had happened between you. We're figuring things out, Emily said carefully. It's complicated, obviously, with the work situation, but we're trying to handle it the right way. Meaning? Meaning we're not hiding it, but we're also not making it anyone else's business. We're keeping our professional and personal relationships separate. Laura nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. And for what it's worth, I think he's crazy about you. Has been for months from what I can tell. Emily felt her cheeks flush. Really? Are you kidding? The way he looks at you when you're not paying attention. The way he actually smiles when you're around. Trust me, it's obvious to anyone who's watching. Is it obvious to everyone? I don't think so. Most people are too caught up in their own work to notice. But Emily? Laura leaned closer. He's a good guy, one of the better bosses in this building from what I hear. If you two can make it work, I think that's wonderful. Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. Having Laura's support meant more than she had realized it would. The rest of the morning passed smoothly, with Emily feeling more relaxed than she had in weeks. When Marcus asked her to bring some files to his office just before lunch, she didn't feel the usual flutter of nervousness about being alone with him. How are you feeling about everything? Marcus asked quietly as Emily set the documents on his desk. Better, Emily said honestly. I told Laura about us, about Romano's. Marcus's eyebrows rose in surprise. How did that go? Better than I expected. She was supportive, actually. Said she thought you were crazy about me. Marcus smiled. She's not wrong about that. Emily felt that familiar flutter in her chest, but this time she didn't try to suppress it. Marcus, I want to talk to your mother. My mother? She said something to you about me being afraid of happiness, and I think she was right. I'd like to meet with her properly, to thank her for the perspective you shared with me. Marcus looked surprised but pleased. She'd love that. She's in town until Wednesday. Would you like to have dinner with us tonight? Nothing fancy, just the three of us. Emily felt a moment of nervousness but pushed through it. I'd like that very much. That evening, Emily found herself sitting across from Helen Reed at a quiet family restaurant, trying not to feel intimidated by the woman's intelligent gaze and warm but assessing demeanor. Emily, Helen said after they had ordered, Marcus tells me you work very hard and that he depends on you a great deal. I enjoy my job, Emily replied, and I have a lot of respect for what Marcus has built with the company. And personally? How do you feel about my son personally? Emily felt her cheeks flush, but she met Helen's gaze directly. I care about him very much, more than I expected to, honestly. Helen nodded approvingly. Good. Honesty is important. Marcus also tells me that you've been hurt before, that you're cautious about trusting. Emily glanced at Marcus, who gave her an encouraging smile. Yes, that's true. My last relationship ended badly. It's made me more careful about opening my heart again. Tell me about it, Helen said simply. So Emily found herself sharing the story of David's betrayal with a woman she had just met, explaining about the double life and the shattered trust in the years of rebuilding her confidence. Helen listened without interruption, her expression growing more understanding with each detail. That must have been devastating, Helen said when Emily finished. It was. It made me question my judgment about people, about relationships, about everything. Helen was quiet for a moment, seeming to consider her words. Emily, can I share something with you about my own experience? Of course. Marcus's father left when Marcus was 3 years old, just disappeared one day, no explanation, no goodbye. I found out later that he had another family in another state, children he had never told me about. Emily's eyes widened. I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago, but I understand the feeling of being deceived by someone you trusted completely. For years afterward, I was afraid to let anyone get close to me or to Marcus. I was so focused on protecting us from being hurt again that I almost missed out on some wonderful relationships. What changed? Emily asked. Helen smiled. Marcus did, actually. When he was about 12, he asked me why I never went on dates like his friends' mothers did. I gave him some excuse about being too busy, but he looked at me with those serious eyes and said, "Mom, just because one person was mean to us doesn't mean everyone will be." Emily felt tears prick at her eyes. He was wise even then. He was. And he was right. I started dating again, slowly and carefully, and eventually I met a wonderful man named Robert. We were together for 8 years before he passed away from a heart attack. Those were some of the happiest years of my life, and I almost missed them because I was afraid. "I can see why Marcus values your advice so much," Emily said softly. Helen reached across the table and patted Emily's hand. "My dear, I can see that you care deeply for my son, and I can see that he's completely smitten with you. But more than that, I can see that you're both good people who want to do right by each other. That's more than most couples have. But the work situation is complicated, yes," Helen interrupted gently, "but not impossible to navigate. You're both adults, you're both professionals, and you're both committed to handling this with integrity. That's what matters." Emily looked at Marcus, who had been listening quietly to the conversation between the two most important women in his life. "What do you think?" Emily asked him. "About all of this?" "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that I want to stop worrying about what might go wrong and start focusing on what could go right. I think we've both been so afraid of making mistakes that we've been paralyzed." "So what do we do?" Emily asked. "We move forward," Helen said before Marcus could answer. "Carefully, thoughtfully, but forward. You talk to the right people at work about the situation. You set clear boundaries between your professional and personal relationships, and you give yourselves permission to be happy." Emily felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of fear and anxiety that had been there for so long, she had forgotten what it felt like to breathe freely. "You make it sound so simple," Emily said. "Not simple," Helen corrected, "but not impossible either. Love is never simple, dear, but it's always worth fighting for when it's real." The next morning, Emily woke up feeling lighter than she had in months. She and Marcus had talked for another hour after Helen went back to her hotel, planning how they would handle the various aspects of their relationship going forward. First, they would schedule a meeting with human resources to discuss the situation and ensure they were following all company policies. Second, they would maintain strict professional boundaries at work, no personal conversations or displays of affection in the office. Third, they would be honest with their close colleagues who asked directly, but they wouldn't make their relationship the subject of office chatter. Most importantly, they would stop letting fear dictate their choices. Emily arrived at work that morning to find Marcus already at his desk, but this time when he looked up and smiled at her, she smiled back without reservation. "Good morning," she said warmly. "Good morning. How are you feeling about everything?" "Nervous but good," Emily admitted. "Ready to move forward." "I called HR this morning," Marcus said quietly. "We have a meeting with Sarah Chen at 3 o'clock this afternoon, just to make sure we're handling everything properly." Emily felt a flutter of nervousness but pushed through it. "Good. I think that's the right thing to do." The meeting with HR went better than Emily had dared to hope. Sarah Chen, the head of human resources, listened to their situation with professional interest and assured them that as long as they maintained appropriate workplace boundaries, there was no policy against their relationship. "The company recognizes that personal relationships can develop between colleagues," Sarah explained. "Our main concern is ensuring that those relationships don't create conflicts of interest or uncomfortable situations for other employees." "What does that mean practically?" Marcus asked. "It means that Emily's performance evaluations and any decisions about her employment need to be handled by someone other than you, Marcus. It means keeping personal conversations and any physical affection out of the workplace. And it means being prepared for some curiosity from colleagues, which you should handle with professionalism and discretion." Emily felt a huge weight lift off her shoulders. They weren't breaking any rules. They weren't doing anything wrong. "Thank you," she said to Sarah as they prepared to leave. "I was worried about how this might affect my professional reputation." "Emily, you've built a solid reputation here based on your work ethic and competence," Sarah replied. A personal relationship doesn't change that. Just continue to be the professional you've always been, and I don't foresee any problems. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Marcus settled into a new rhythm. At work, they maintained their professional relationship with perhaps a bit more warmth than before, but nothing that seemed inappropriate to outside observers. After work, they explored their personal relationship with growing confidence and deepening affection. They had dinner twice more during the week, took a long walk through the park on Saturday, and spent Sunday afternoon at Marcus's apartment, cooking together and watching old movies. Emily was surprised by how domestic it felt, how natural it seemed to curl up on his couch and argue about whether Cary Grant or Jimmy Stewart was the better leading man. "I have to confess something," Marcus said as they were cleaning up after dinner on Sunday evening. "What's that?" Emily asked, drying dishes while he washed. "I've been thinking about this, about us, for a lot longer than I let on. Months, actually." Emily felt her cheeks flush with pleasure. "Really? Really? You remember last Christmas at the office holiday party?" Emily did remember. She had worn a red dress and had spent most of the evening making sure the event ran smoothly, but she remembered Marcus asking her to dance during the last song of the night. "You looked so beautiful that night," Marcus continued, "and when we danced, I remember thinking that I could hold you like that forever. But then the song ended, and you went back to being my assistant, and I went back to being your boss, and I convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing." "You didn't imagine it," Emily said softly. "I felt it too." Marcus set down the plate he was washing and turned to face her fully. "I'm glad we're not pretending anymore." "So am I." Marcus reached out and touched her cheek gently, the same way he had that night in his office when everything started. But this time, Emily didn't pull away. This time, she leaned into his touch and let herself feel the warmth and safety of being cared for. "Emily," Marcus said quietly, "I know it's still early, and I know we're still figuring things out, but I want you to know that this feels different to me, more real than anything I've felt before." "It feels real to me too," Emily whispered. Marcus leaned down and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Emily kissed him back, letting herself fall into the moment without fear or reservation. When they broke apart, Emily rested her forehead against his and smiled. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we keep figuring it out one day at a time," Marcus said. "Together." "Together," Emily agreed. 3 months later, Emily was sitting at her desk on a busy Tuesday morning when Laura appeared with an amused expression on her face. "Okay, I have to ask," Laura said, settling on the edge of Emily's desk. "Are you and Mr. Reed actually fooling anyone with this strictly professional act you two have going on?" Emily looked up from her computer, trying to keep her expression neutral. "I don't know what you mean." "Emily, yesterday I watched him bring you coffee at exactly the way you like it, and you lit up like Christmas morning. This morning, he asked your opinion about a client proposal before he asked anyone else's, and you two had an entire conversation with just eye contact. If that's strictly professional, then I'm the Queen of England." Emily felt her cheeks flush, but she was smiling. "We're maintaining appropriate workplace boundaries." "Uh-huh, and I'm sure those boundaries have nothing to do with the way you both smile whenever someone mentions the other person's name." Emily gave up pretending. "Are we that obvious? To someone who's paying attention? Yes. To the casual observer? Probably not. But Emily, I have to say, you both seem really happy. Happier than I've seen either of you in the whole time I've known you." Emily felt a warm glow in her chest. "We are happy." "Good. You deserve it." That evening, Emily was getting ready to leave when Marcus appeared at her desk. "Are you ready to go?" he asked quietly. They had been carpooling to work for the past month, a practical arrangement that also gave them a few extra minutes together each day. Emily gathered her things and followed Marcus to the elevator, noting the way he waited for her to step in first, the way he stood just close enough that she could smell his cologne. "How was your afternoon?" Marcus asked as they walked to his car. "Good. Productive. Laura cornered me today about our strictly professional relationship," Emily said with air quotes. Marcus laughed. "What did you tell her?" "That we're maintaining appropriate workplace boundaries. She didn't buy it for a second." "Are you worried about that?" Emily considered the question as Marcus started the car. 3 months ago, she would have been panicked about people noticing, about becoming the subject of office gossip. Now, she found she didn't care as much. Not really, she said honestly. I mean, we are maintaining boundaries. We're just happy. And apparently that's noticeable. Is that okay with you, being noticeably happy? Emily smiled, thinking about how much had changed since that first impulsive kiss in Marcus's office. Yes, I think it is. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Marcus spoke again. Emily, I want to ask you something, but I don't want you to feel pressured to answer right away. Emily felt a flutter of nervousness. Okay. I've been thinking about the future lately, about what I want my life to look like in 5 years, 10 years, and every time I try to picture it, you're there. Emily's heart started beating faster. Marcus, I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow, Marcus said quickly. I'm just saying that this, us, feels like something that could last, something worth building toward. Emily was quiet for a moment, letting his words sink in. 6 months ago, the idea of planning a future with someone would have terrified her. Now it filled her with a cautious but growing sense of excitement. I've been thinking about the future too, she said softly, and you're in mine as well. Marcus reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. Good. That's really good. That weekend, Marcus took Emily to meet more of his family, his aunt and uncle who lived across town, and his cousin James who was visiting from Chicago. Emily was nervous about the meeting, but she found Marcus's family to be warm and welcoming, full of stories about Marcus as a child and questions about Emily's own background. She's lovely, Marcus, his Aunt Patricia said quietly while Emily was in the kitchen helping with dessert. And she makes you happy. We can see it in your face. She does make me happy, Marcus agreed. Happier than I knew I could be. Then don't let her get away, Patricia advised. Good women are hard to find, and this one is special. Later that evening, as Marcus walked Emily to her apartment door, she found herself thinking about Patricia's words. Your family likes me, she said, looking up at Marcus in the soft glow of her building's entrance lights. They love you, Marcus corrected. Almost as much as I do. Emily's breath caught. It was the first time either of them had used the word love out loud, though Emily had been feeling it for weeks. I love you too, she whispered, and Marcus's face lit up with joy. This time when he kissed her, it felt like a promise, a commitment to the future they were building together, one careful step at a time. 6 months after that first kiss in Marcus's office, Emily woke up in her own bed on a Saturday morning and realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't afraid of being hurt, wasn't afraid of trusting her judgment, wasn't afraid of letting someone see all of her. She was in love, completely and utterly, with a man who treated her with respect and kindness and honesty. A man who had proven over and over again that his words matched his actions, that his promises were real. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Good morning, beautiful. Ready for our adventure today? They were driving to a small town 2 hours away to visit an antique market that Emily had mentioned wanting to see. It was the kind of simple, sweet day that Emily had learned to treasure. Just the two of them, no pressure, no agenda, except to enjoy each other's company. Emily texted back, Ready? Can't wait to see you. And for the first time in years, that was completely true. She couldn't wait to see him, couldn't wait to spend the day with him, couldn't wait to see what their future held. As she got dressed and prepared for their day together, Emily thought about how much her life had changed since that morning when she first noticed the flutter in her chest when Marcus smiled at her. She had learned that love didn't have to be hidden to be real. She had learned that trust could be rebuilt, one honest conversation at a time. She had learned that sometimes the biggest risk was not letting yourself be happy. Most importantly, she had learned that she was strong enough to choose love over fear. When Marcus arrived to pick her up, Emily was waiting on her front steps with a smile that felt like sunshine. Ready? He asked, leaning down to kiss her softly. Ready, Emily said, taking his hand and meaning it with every fiber of her being. Together they walked toward his car and toward whatever beautiful possibilities lay ahead of them. Love, Emily had learned, was worth every risk she had taken to find it.